Hi YouTube, welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be a really quick review of the documentary series that I watched on WeTV called The Mysterious Death of Eazy-E, which was featuring Eazy-E's daughter Eazy, formerly known as Erin Wright. Now she goes by the name of Eazy. Her mother Tracy, which is one of Eazy-E's plethora of baby mamas, and Jasmine, who is an investigative reporter who is assisting Eazy and Tracy in getting more information surrounding the death of Eazy-E. It was a 4-part series. I watched all 4 parts on Sunday. It revealed a lot of stuff that I had no idea about. When Eazy-E died in 1995, I was in high school at the time. And I do remember that between the time they announced he was in the hospital with full-blown AIDS to the time that they announced that he had passed away was extremely quick. It was really, really fast. And it was just so shocking, but I had just assumed that that he had contracted HIV through either intravenous drug use or unprotected sex, unsafe sex. But this documentary was able to debunk some of the myths surrounding his death. So it appears to me that Eazy and her mother Tracy already have a conclusion in their mind of what happened to Eazy-E, and now they are looking for evidence to support their conclusion. Whereas the reporter Jasmine did not have a conclusion as far as what happened, but she was letting the evidence lead her to a conclusion. It seemed like to me also that Eazy and Tracy assume that, or truly believe that, it was more than just him contracting HIV and then succumbing to it. They think that at first they didn't even believe that he died of AIDS because they saw no medical proof of it. They did not have access to his death certificate, so they even questioned whether or not Eazy-E actually had full-blown AIDS or even had HIV. They were able to get copies of his death certificate, and the death certificate did say that the cause of death was complications from acquired immune deficiency syndrome, otherwise known as AIDS. And I think he had died from severe pneumonia. When the documentary started, it started at his gravesite. People had gathered around his gravesite, and at the time, his gravesite did not have a full gravestone. I think it just had the plaque with his name, date of birth, date of death, and a quote. And I think the quote was, "We loved you, but heaven loved you more," something to that effect. So they were able to get an actual gravestone for his grave site, a really nice one with his pictures, like a full colored picture, the correct date of birth, because the previous one had the incorrect date of birth. They listed his birth as 1963 instead of 1964, and his death certificate also was 1963 instead of 1964. Now these errors kind of fuel the fire for Eazy and Tracy that there was something suspicious about his death. Eazy is one of 11 children that Eazy-E had, and from 8 different women. Now, when Eazy-E passed away, he passed away right after, about 12 days or so after he was married to Tamika Wright, who ended up inheriting the majority of his estate. And of course, all that it encompassed, such as, Ruthless Records, etc. I got the feeling while watching this documentary series, that Tracy, Eazy's mother, she talked a lot about the love that her and Eazy had for each other, how they met, the kind of relationship that they had, how close they were to one another. And it seemed like she was trying to prove that maybe she believes in her mind that she was his true love, his one and only true love. It seemed like to me that she was trying to prove that what she and Eazy-E had was real, to sort of maybe discredit the validity or whether or not the marriage to Tamika was truly genuine, because I feel like Ebe and Tracy were trying to make it seem as if, and they didn't want to push this too much, in fear of being sued, but it seemed like they were trying to insinuate or allege that Tamika Wright had something to do indirectly with Eazy-E's death, possibly, because they questioned whether or not Eazy-E was fully mentally aware of what was going on in the last few days of his life, when he got married, when he signed the marriage certificate, when he signed his will, his last will and testament. Tracy and Ebe seemed to question whether or not he did this willingly and knowingly. Now, as far as his HIV status, it was confirmed in the documentary that he did have AIDS or he did die from AIDS because of his death certificate. Then the question was, how did he get AIDS? He didn't get it from intravenous drug use. That was proven, I guess. That was concluded that he wasn't an intravenous drug user. He didn't get it from homosexual sex. So that left only one thing, that he got it from heterosexual sex. Now, the theory behind him getting HIV through heterosexual sex was normally when someone gets HIV, even during the days before treatment, before there was a lot of awareness around it, it seemed like if you got it through sexual contact, even if you weren't on medication, you wouldn't necessarily die in a month or two. And it seemed like he was diagnosed with AIDS and then he was dead within, I think, a month or a month and a half. So Ebe and Tracy questioned how quickly he died from the time that he was diagnosed. So they explored some theories that maybe he had gotten it through nefarious ways other than sex or using dirty needles, etc. So in 2003, Suge Knight appeared on Jimmy Kimmel and had made a really off-color joke about Eazy-E dying from a HIV, died from being injected with a syringe that was filled with HIV-positive blood. And so the documentary explored the possibility of maybe Suge Knight possibly injecting Eazy-E with this HIV-infected syringe. And because there was a lot of animosity between Eazy-E and Suge Knight, because it involved Dr. Dre leaving NWA because he felt like, his money wasn't right, and leaving Ruthless Records and jumping ship with Suge Knight, who was at the time a bodyguard for NWA. So when Dr. Dre was having these doubts about whether or not he was being compensated fairly in his contract, Suge Knight was fueling the fire by whispering in his ear, letting him know that he needed to break away because he was not being compensated fairly. So Suge Knight starts Death Row Records, Dre goes off with Death Row Records, and this starts this, war between Death Row and Ruthless Records. And of course, Eazy-E would not let Dre out of his contract that easily. So Suge Knight literally threatened to physically harm Eazy-E if he didn't. So he went ahead and signed the contract to release Dre. This resulted in, it kind of backfired on Suge Knight, because when it was known that Eazy-E had signed this contract releasing Dre under duress, his lawyers made sure that Suge Knight and Dre, or that whole camp, would not be able to easily produce music or obtain other contracts in the music industry, because they let it be known that Suge Knight was a thug and he had no problem hurting people to get what he wanted. So because he was not able to do exactly what he wanted to do with Dre after he was released from Ruthless Records, the rumor mill was possibly that maybe Suge Knight had injected Eazy-E with HIV positive blood. So the documentary explores that theory. That theory is debunked, that they believe that it wasn't Dre, it wasn't Suge Knight himself that would have done that, because it would have been stupid for him to be the one to do that and then to sort of like admit it on national TV. So that was debunked, but the word on the curb, the word on the street at the time was that he had gotten it from being injected with HIV positive blood. That's what a lot of people had believed, because the intensity of the virus and how quickly he died was like it could only have happened if he had gotten the virus directly injected into his bloodstream in that way. So that was one theory. The other theory was that he had gotten the virus through acupuncture. Now, Eazy-E had a manager by the name of Jerry Heller, and this manager had basically discovered NWA and put NWA on the scene. And this guy, Jerry Heller, took credit for spotlighting or discovering or bringing the world gangster rap, bringing to the world gangster rap, because he discovered Eazy-E. He worked with Eazy-E and NWA, got them all the record deals and whatever that needed to happen to make them successful. So he sees himself as like the father of gangster rap. But him and Eazy-E had a falling out because of contractual issues. Now, when they had that falling out, the other word on the curb was that maybe Jerry Heller, because he was so bitter, he was so embarrassed, he was so upset about Eazy-E kicking him out of Ruthless Records. I'm assuming he booted him from Ruthless Records. That he was so upset about it that he had suggested for Eazy-E to go see an acupuncturist, because Eazy-E suffered back problems from a four-wheeler accident. That Jerry Heller had suggested that he go see an acupuncturist for his back, and the acupuncturist had used HIV-tinted needles. That theory was debunked. You know, they kind of talked to some HIV experts. I think a nurse who has specialized in treating HIV patients about the whole theory of him getting HIV through acupuncture needles. And that was debunked because it didn't make any sense that Jerry Heller would want to do this to Eazy-E when, after Eazy-E's death, Jerry Heller was a big part of, I wasn't sure if he was a big part of the entire Wright family, like he was still associating with them, helping them out in whatever way he could, or if he was just a big part of Easy's life. I wasn't quite clear, but Eazy herself had said that Jerry Heller was like a surrogate grandfather for her, and that there was no way he would have done this to her father. And also there's video footage of Jerry Heller's home where he has a picture of Eazy-E holding Eazy when she was just a newborn. So if he still was taking care of the family, at least taking care of Eazy, being there, if nothing else, but for emotional support, how could he have been the one responsible for Eazy-E's death? And so even though they had issues with contracts and money and stuff like that, he didn't harbor any ill will towards Eazy-E, and he would not have sent him to an acupuncturist to use HIV-infected needles on him. So that theory was debunked. So then what we're left with is he must have gotten it through sex. Now, Eazy and her mother, Tracy, they kind of questioned this, because if he had gotten it through sex, then he would have had the virus for a while. If he ended up dying in 1995, he would have had the virus for a while. And if the virus was in him, why weren't any of his 8 baby mamas infected? I guess various of other girlfriends infected. If he had gotten it through unprotected sex, and he had been carrying this virus all along, how come he never passed it on to anyone else? Supposedly at the time that he died, I remember clearly that it was known, or it was reported, that Tamika, his wife at his death, she did not have HIV, and neither did the child that she was carrying, because she was pregnant at the time Eazy-E died. So that means that she was sexually active with him within months of his death, if she was still pregnant when he passed away. So, but she didn't have the virus, and the baby didn't have the virus. None of his other baby mamas, supposedly, also, they didn't have the virus either. So if he had it, how come he didn't pass it on to anyone else? Now, the investigative reporter, Jasmine, was able to talk to a Dr. Jordan. Dr. Jordan assisted in treating Eazy-E because he was basically like the consultant of Eazy-E's primary doctor at the time. So Eazy-E was being treated by a doctor by the name of Dr. Williams, and he was the one, I guess, that was dealing with Eazy-E primarily. And Dr. Williams would consult with Dr. Jordan because at the time, 1995, HIV was not necessarily new, but there was still a lot about it that was unknown, and there were certain doctors in the field that had specialized in treating HIV patients and studying it and researching it and had more knowledge than others. So Dr. Williams consulted with Dr. Jordan in the treatment and the care of Eazy-E. And when Jasmine, the investigative reporter, when she spoke with Dr. Jordan, she asked him some, really hard questions, such as, well, how was it that he was diagnosed and then within like a month or so he was dead? And Dr. Jordan said, it was because he had been living with the disease. He didn't just get it and then die. He had the disease. He had had it for years but didn't know it. And so then Jasmine asked the doctor, well, if he had had it for years, how come none of his other baby mamas were infected? He was obviously having unprotected sex with them because they were having his children. So how come none of them were infected if he had been having this virus for years? And Dr. Jordan dropped a bombshell and said, well, actually 2 of the baby mamas tested positive for HIV, and they are my patients, and I have been treating them for years. So that was a big shocker, because the theory was, the understanding was that none of the baby mamas ever got it. So how could he have had it for all this time if he never passed it on to any of the women that he was impregnating? So Jasmine takes this information back to Eazy and Tracy, and Eazy and Tracy were kind of doubtful of this. So there was at the very, very end of the documentary, at the end of the last episode, it said that Eazy and Tracy were not necessarily discrediting Dr. Jordan, but they needed to see actual evidence of what he was saying. They wanted to see the receipts of what he was saying, that 2 of the baby mamas were HIV positive and that he was treating them, and that they had gotten HIV from Eazy-E. I don't know if they would ever find that out, like where they got it from, because it could be coincidental that these people who were dealing with each other all had HIV. But can you prove who got it from who? So Eazy and her mom were not really like sold on that idea. I don't know if they truly believe, but they lean more towards he had got it through some nefarious way, like he was injected with the virus because somebody was out to get him. And I think that they kind of speculate that, or they kind of believe that Tamika Wright has something to do with it, because she was the one that benefited the most from his death. She inherited the bulk of his estate, which was a $20 million estate. And Eazy-E's children, I'm not sure how many he had with Tamika Wright, but Eazy-E's children, I'm assuming the ones not from Tamika, all inherited $75,000 apiece at the end of the day, because when he passed away, there were many lawsuits filed against the estate. I'm assuming the children also had gotten together to sue the estate for a more fair share, and they ended up with $75,000 apiece, including Eazy. And so Eazy is trying to, I guess, get to the truth of exactly how her father died. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure like what her end goal is. For example, if she's able to prove that Tamika Wright allegedly had something to do with him passing, allegedly has something to do with him contracting HIV right before he died, I guess maybe she plans on suing her and getting more money out of this. I don't know. But at the end of the documentary, it appears that Eazy and Tracy were still very much unsatisfied. They did not get the answers that they were looking for. It appeared to me that Jasmine, the investigator, that she was probably, not the investigator, investigative reporter, that Jasmine was probably satisfied with the information that they were able to obtain, that Eazy-E had HIV. He had been carrying it for years. And Dr. Jordan had told Jasmine that because Jasmine asked Dr. Jordan, well, if he had been carrying it for years, how come he didn't infect these other women? And the doctor said, well, in the beginning, the viral load is low. And of course, as the disease progresses, your viral load gets higher. And that's how his two patients, who were, also Eazy-E's baby mamas, this is how they ended up getting it. And Jasmine asked the doctor, well, how come Tamika didn't get it? Because she was the one that had been having sex with him, most recently, because she was pregnant with his child before he died. And Dr. Jordan said, well, she just must have been really lucky to not have it. So it seemed like the documentary ended with more questions than answers, possibly because, could it be possible that Tamika did get it, but doesn't want to disclose that because it is, extremely private and personal, and she doesn't have to, she doesn't want to? Is it possible that maybe she did contract HIV from him and just, didn't want to disclose it to the public, and that, she was able to get the treatment that she needed? Because look at Magic Johnson. He contracted HIV in the early 90s, late 80s, somewhere around there possibly, and he's still, alive and kicking until today, 2021. He's been living with the disease for way over 20 years, maybe closer to 30 years he's been living with the disease. And maybe that's the same thing with Tamika. Maybe she did contract it from Eazy-E, but was able to get the proper treatment to, to continue living and not get sick. I don't know. I am inclined to believe that he had it for a while. I don't think that... I don't know. I'm inclined to say I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. I really don't know. They also spoke to Layzie Bone. Easy Bone. They also spoke to Layzie Bone, which is a member of Bone Thugs and Harmony, which was a group that Eazy-E had discovered, and he was producing and managing them at the time of his death. And Layzie Bone believes that acupuncture theory, that he was injected or he had dirty acupuncture needles, and he believes that your boy Jerry Heller has something to do with it. There was an artist that had appeared with Suge Knight the night that he came on Jimmy Kimmel. They were able to track him down and speak with him, and he said that he had asked Suge Knight that night that he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel, when they were driving back, why would he make that joke about Eazy-E dying from AIDS because he was injected with a HIV infested needle? And Suge Knight said that I forgot what his answer was, but the thing is that this particular artist, he did not believe that, I think his name was Crooked Eye. Crooked Eye did not believe at all that Suge Knight injected Eazy-E or had anything to do with it, but Suge Knight believes that someone did inject Eazy-E with an HIV filled needle. There was also questions in the documentary about Eazy-E's coherency when he got married and when he was signing the marriage certificate and when he was signing his will. E.B. and Tracy believed that he was not coherent, that he was coerced into signing these documents. Once again, which goes back to the whole theory of Tamika doing something shady to try to get his estate. Hurry up and, get married so that everything can be left to her. And the people that were there, they were able to track down the officiant, the man who married them, a witness, which was a pastor, and I think those were the two people that they were able to track down. Oh, and then there was a publicist for the hospital at the time. She was like a publicist or spokeswoman for Cedars-Sinai at the time that Eazy-E was a patient there. And she was the one that I think the reporters were dealing with, primarily, with the day-to-day updates of his condition. And all these people, the officiant, the witness, and the spokesperson, the spokeslady, they all said that he was coherent, that it didn't seem like he was doing anything against his will, that he was pretty much coherent. I'm trying to remember who said that he wasn't coherent. I don't remember, but E.B. and Tracy believe that he probably was not coherent and that he was coerced into signing these documents, the marriage certificate and the last will and testament. Now, the witness, which was a pastor who knew Dr. Williams, and Dr. Williams was Eazy-E's primary doctor during this time, he said that Eazy-E was coherent. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was signing. He understood the significance and the legality and the impact of the documents that he was signing and that he was signing them willingly. Man, when he said that, Tracy and Eazy were like, they got on him real quick, and they were like, well, how could he have been able to sign these documents knowingly and willingly when you just told us that the doctor told you that he was going to have an operation the next day where he may or may not even make it, because the witness, which was this pastor, he was also a patient of Dr. Williams. And so when he had left Eazy-E's room, he ran into Dr. Williams. And they were having like a really casual conversation about Eazy-E. And Dr. Williams had told the pastor that Eazy-E was facing, he was going to have surgery the next day. And the surgery was so critical that he may or may not make it. And so the pastor was like, it shocked him that the doctor was telling him this, because he had just seen Eazy and he seemed normal, coherent. He was talking. He seemed, all right. So he was surprised that the doctor was telling him that he was going to have surgery that was so serious that he may not even make it, because he didn't seem like someone who was that deathly ill. And then Eazy and Tracy were upset about the fact that this doctor, who has now since passed away, he passed away in 2010, I think, that Dr. Williams would so, casually talk about a patient's medical issues with, one of his other patients, which was this pastor who witnessed the wedding. They were like really upset about that, because they were like, that's violating the doctor-patient confidentiality and blah, blah, blah. So they were not feeling this pastor, because this pastor was not fitting into their theory that Eazy-E was not coherent and that he was forced to sign these documents. So they were not feeling him. They were not feeling the officiant, the one who conducted the wedding, which they found, I guess Tamika, whoever was involved, they have found the officiant in the yellow pages, which kind of goes into Eazy and Tracy's theory that they were just trying to hurry up and get married because they knew he was going to die, and they wanted to hurry up and do this so that she can inherit his estate. The officiant also said that Eazy was coherent, that he didn't seem like someone who was being forced to do something against his will. The only thing that the officiant said was that he was really weak. He was physically weak. He couldn't even put the ring on Tamika's finger because he was so weak, and she had to actually help him put the ring on her finger. So there was an interview that they were able to listen to, which was his last interview, which was recorded by his publicist. I forgot the publicist's name. She also played the recording of his last interview before he died. And in the interview, you can hear Eazy-E coughing. And she said that she thought he was coughing because the coffee that she gave him, maybe he didn't like it or that it was bad, and that's why he was coughing. But he had been suffering from a really bad cough the days leading up to his death. And some people thought it was because maybe he was a weed smoker. Some people thought, he said that he had bronchitis, and bronchitis runs really bad in his family. But it was his body breaking down from AIDS and him slowly losing the battle to AIDS. So that was that. It was a really nice documentary. Like I said, it revealed a lot of stuff that I didn't know that was surrounding his death, because I thought it was, open and shut. He had AIDS, then he died. But no, according to Eazy and Tracy, there was much more to the story than that. I don't know where I stand. I don't know if I believe this or not, but he was a hard worker. One of the people that was interviewed in the documentary had said that he knew Eazy-E personally, and that he was a really, really hard worker because he had 11 children, and he knew that he had to work really hard, not just to support them, but to provide enough for them for their futures. So Eazy and Tracy are like, they don't believe that he would have willingly signed a will where he was basically leaving his children absolutely nothing. And, from a $20 million estate, they believe that, if he knew what was going on, he would have made sure that his children were taken care of. So they don't buy this thing about him signing a will that left his kids practically nothing. I don't know if they got the $75,000 each from the will itself, or if it was after the lawsuit, the court awarded them $75,000. I'm not really clear on that. I didn't do any research after I saw the documentary. I just saw the documentary, made some notes, and came to record. And I think that's about it. There was the grandmother, which was the mother of Eazy-E, because they needed to talk to her because she was there when he was in the hospital. She was in the room with him, and they got in contact. So Eazy has a relationship with one of her sisters, Erica Wright, and she had asked Erica to contact the grandmother because Evie and the grandmother don't speak. So Erica was able to get in contact with the grandmother and asked the grandmother if she was willing to participate in the documentary. At first, the grandmother said yes, and then one of the brothers got to the grandmother when he got wind of what was going on with the documentary and convinced the grandmother to not do it. So the grandmother didn't do it, and this really frustrated Evie because she really needed to talk to people who were there when he died. I guess for her to get clarity on whether or not he was coherent when he signed these documents. And also with the documents, there were 2 wills. The lawyer said there were, I think, was it the lawyer? Someone had said that there were 2 wills. One will was if he got married to Tamika, how his estate would be handled, and the other will was if he did not get married to Tamika, how the estate would be handled. And of course, the one that prevailed was the one that included Tamika as his wife. So it was a good documentary. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you like it, give me a thumbs up. If you really like it, go ahead and subscribe. It's okay. And I will talk to you later. Bye.